Yes, Hawthorn. Well, if they're a little bit inconsistent and slow to get going, Brownie, in the first part of the season, between the rounds 12 and 16, did not drop a game, and between rounds 9 and 16, went on a 7-game winning run and some big wins against some big opponents, including Fremantle and Sydney.
Yeah, they certainly found their form, and some of their football, in particularly later in that segment against Fremantle and Sydney, was just absolutely flawless. There's no other way to describe it. They were kicking plenty of goals against some of the better sides in the competition and keeping them, to 6 or 7 goals, which is unheard of.
First time in the season, James, that there was good continuity and consistent performances during that period.
Yeah, definitely. I think the boys really started, stringing together a few nice wins, and I think they're playing against those good teams in Sydney and Fremantle. The boys really primed and ready to go, and it just shows how good they were and primed and ready to go that they put those performances together.
Different position for you to find yourself in, because this was a football club that has been very good for a long period of time, and you're just rolling in week by week, back-to-back wins. So it's a strange situation for you in your first season with Hawthorn.
I think the expectation is at Hawthorn, you do win every week. Like I said earlier in the year, it was pretty up and down, and you got a bit of criticism for that. And but you move on, and the boys really responded that mid part of the year and really played some really good football.
Chippy, you missed 4 weeks with the Peck in round 2. You come back, play some football, and then in round 13 against the same club, Essendon, you dislocate your shoulder.
Yeah, mate. So I think next year I'm playing with Essendon, mate. Might have a bye that week. Yeah,
How close were you to have to go in for season-ending surgery?
We're pretty close. I thought about it's pretty 50-50 really. If could have kept playing and tape it up and keep it together, which was pretty lucky it did. And otherwise it was probably season-ending surgery middle of the year, and it wouldn't have been in the premiership side, mate. So it would have been shattering.
How much of a say did you have in that ultimate decision not to go under the knife?
A little bit, but really you have to listen to the doctors and the physios and the staff, because they've got the knowledge of the shoulder rehab and what everything goes into it. Because I'm just a country boy, knows not much about that stuff, mate. So so just listen to them
and meniscuses and all sorts of things in the shoulder.
Exactly right.
Whatever they are, it was a good decision in the end. Let's go back around, Brownie, because in round 12, the most talked about knee and running gait, Sam Mitchell, Taylor Walker, who I think may have been your direct opponent.
Yeah, mate, I was happy as Larry, mate, when he went down. He's got subbed out, so keep going, Mitch.
Yeah, so that obviously ended Taylor Walker's night. He came back on to try and run that corky out, but he was finished for the night. And controversy started to surround that incident with Sam Mitchell. He got looked at by the match review panel and cleared. Nothing to answer for.
Does lightning strike twice? Well, Taylor Walker thought so, because against Fremantle in round 15, guess what? Sam Mitchell, Nate Fyfe, knee.
Again, yeah, he in the running gate again, Sam Mitchell comes in there, as you can see, Nat Fyfe to block, and Mitchell corks him again. So Tex Walker actually tweeted, lightning strikes twice. Again, I think he got looked at there, got found guilty, but it was a fine for misconduct more than missing a week. But it was. He also made that gesture with the Essendon players, so it wasn't a great 3 or 4 weeks there for Sammy Mitchell, who's copping it from everyone.
But his football was certainly speaking for itself. He was having a remarkable year. Wedged in between the knee gate involving Sam Mitchell with Taylor Walker and Nate Fyfe was a very sobering round of football. Round 14. It was a fitting tribute, I think, given the dramatic circumstances surrounding the very tragic passing of Phil Walsh. A lot of debate about whether or not the game would go ahead. I'm pleased that it did go ahead, because it was a fitting performance, a 10-point win against the Magpies, played in absolutely the right spirit, James. Yeah,
it was a great game, that Friday night game against Collingwood. I think you got pretty lucky in the end. I think Collingwood had a good game and good run of it, but they couldn't kick straight in front of goal. So, yeah, we were pretty lucky to get away with that one.
Been a remarkable season. We've had a lot to contend with. We're talking about Hawthorn's great year, but there have been some sobering moments this year, Brownie.
Yeah, just an absolutely devastating moment to wake up to the news of Phil Walsh's passing. And I thought the way that the game was played and the way that Hawthorn and Collingwood came together in that poignant moment when they linked arms in the middle of the ground, it set the tone for every other club to do it that round. Was just a special moment, and well done.
Yeah, really well said, Brownie. And then a little bit closer to home, coming off the tragic passing of Phil Walsh, we also had the situation, the cancer scare with Jared Ruffhead.
Yeah, that was really frightening, and I can only imagine what him and his family were going through, and his teammates. What were you thinking? Were you thinking, obviously, his season could potentially be over?
I think it's pretty hard for the players. You know, everyone's pretty close with Jared, his family, and Sarah, his fiance. So they're pretty shocked and saddened by the event. But all we could do is hope for the best result, and hopefully the actual surgery went well, and it was all positive news.
Geez, we put a lot of emphasis and importance on a 4-point win, premierships and all of those type of things, which are important. But in the whole scheme of things, Brownie, we get reminded fairly consistently that there are other far more important things in life.
Well, life is more important, and obviously what he was going through there, and just the uncertainty of not knowing, I think, for a few weeks was the really hard thing for him. But probably the best case scenario was to come back and only miss 2 or 3 weeks. And when he came back, Schwatter, it was like he never left. He came back against Sydney up in ANZ Stadium, just kicked a lazy 5 in his first game back.
Yep. Was pretty impressive was Jared Ruffhead, and wins against, big wins I should say, James, against Fremantle in round 15, a 72-point thrashing in Tassie. And as Brownie said, they backed that up the following week, an 89-point thrashing against the Sydney Swans. Were humming along at that stage of the season.
Yeah, I think the old fortress of down in Tasmania, mate, really come to the fore again. They had a ripping game against Fremantle, I think, down there. I thought it was going to be a close and tight contested game, but the boys really got on top of them early and got it outside and really hit the scoreboard hard.
Those 2 weeks of football from Hawthorn were just absolutely flawless. Like, nobody does what they did to... Fremantle were on top of the ladder, and not only did they beat them, but they opened them up. They kicked 17 goals and kept them to 6, and then to go up to Sydney the very next week and do that, kick 23 goals against Sydney and keep them to 7. Unbelievable fortnight of football from them.
Certainly was, Brownie, and anybody that had any doubts about whether or not Hawthorn would be a player later in the year, they quickly got a raise because that was an impressive fortnight of football. Well, Hawthorn began the run towards the final, sitting in 3rd place, 2 games behind the runaway leader early in the season, Fremantle, and on a 7-game winning streak. But this season had a few more twists and turns in store with the weeks ahead. Let's have a look at what happened between round 17 and 23.
With big wins over the Dockers and Swans in the bank, the Hawks were in red-hot form when they took on the Blues at Etihad Stadium to open round